everybody. I'm here with Edya, and I'm going to show you some of the modifications using the half roller. And for years we didn't have a half roller, but this is really a great modification tool to use almost across the board for anybody who has disorders, diseases, and dysfunctions. So the uniqueness about the half roller compared to the full roller is you can really only just use the full roller one way because it's round all over. But because the half roller has a flat side and a round side, there are times when it's going to be more beneficial to have somebody with the flat side on their torso, and sometimes it's another step to turn the roller over and have the curved side up so that they can experience that same pressure along the spine. So for my clients with scoliosis, when we're doing something like the rebalance sequence, I tend to start them with the flat side up. Because of the curvature of the spine, it's sometimes hard for them to just feel where their spine is, because if it's curved, and they've got a severe curve, there's parts of their spine that feel like they're on the roller and some parts that feel like it's off. So that would be one circumstance to use a flat side up. Also, if I had somebody who is extremely unstable and I was working on the floor with them, I may also start on that flat surface so that they actually are experiencing more surface area along their spine or under their hips or against their ribs to do rib length. The one thing that's tough to do, obviously, on the half roller is gliding. However, there's quite a bit of shearing that you can still do using half roller, and sometimes it offers up an easier, more simplified opportunity for your clients. But for the most part, it's the lengthening techniques and the rebalance sequence that's absolutely beneficial to use on the roller. So Edya and I are just going to go through some of the modifications so that you can see how intriguing it is, especially when you're lying the length of the spine, that your body is still going to move. You're still going to find all of the experiences of anything from gentle rocking to tuck and tilt or the single leg lift, and still perform that. So let's do it. Let's do it. So the first thing we want to look at is lying on the roller on the flat side up. And I'm just going to have Edya lie the length of the roller as if she was going to do the rebalance sequence. And so you can see how she sets herself up exactly in the same way that you would on the full roller. And, you know, because you're on an unstable surface, even with the firm or the flat side up, you still have the opportunity to do everything. So I'm going to have Edya just go ahead and do gentle rocking here with her body. And you see how her body moves just as it would if she were on the full roller. Her body is still able to create that gentle rocking because the roller is moving along the floor as well. This also gives people, I think, an opportunity to really feel how they and the roller move together as a unit. When you have a flat side, I think if you really see somebody who does that shifting, I'll have Edya do kind of like the funky, rocking, where people are shifting from their ribs or maybe their head is turning in the opposite direction, that when you have the flat side, it tends to offer up a little bit more of an experience of allowing the whole body to move in that direction. And all of the length moves that you've learned, I could have Edya come back to a center point and let's take a look at some of the lengthening techniques. You've got the shoulder blade reach, so bringing her arms up and then angling them into that range so that she can create the shoulder blade reach. And you can see how her shoulder girdle can still move along the roller. The roller is wider, so depending upon how narrow someone's torso is, they may actually feel how the shoulder blades butt up against the roller on one or both sides. And I would ask you, Edya, do you feel anything happening on your shoulder girdle?
The left shoulder blade is bumping into the roller, the right is not.
Right, and so that's actually a great way to identify instability, is when the shoulder girdle doesn't really glide along the roller efficiently, it'll sort of bump up into the edge of it. So the sides that you tend to feel the bumping, if ever a client says that to you, that's usually a side where we have a little bit more instability. We want to be mindful of that, you know, and you guys who do neurostrength, this would be something where you would then add some upper body length moves. Upper body neural strength moves. So now we also have single arm reach. So let's take a look at single arm reach here. And you can see how the moves are exactly the same. There's really nothing different in her positioning. She also has double arm reach. So if she performed a double arm reach position, I actually really like the double arm reach on the half roller, because I could even have Edya bend her elbows and put her arms completely on the floor and really kind of identify this nice position where we're going to create the reach. And because she's lowered to the floor, she's actually not that far off, or her shoulder girdle is now coming into protraction or elevation, exactly where it would perhaps happen on the full roller. So now if she just outreaches her elbows up off of the floor, you can see how she really doesn't have to go very far and still perform the move. So oftentimes this can also help people to really identify the positioning, to do the neural flossing and everything else. And then we also have neck turns. So I'm gonna have her bring her arms down and take a look at how she does a neck turn. And again, she's on the flat side of the roller. There's really nothing different in her positioning. The uniqueness about being on this half roller is that she's lowered to the floor. So as she's performing her moves, I feel, especially with the flat side up, it's just oftentimes easier for people to gain confidence in how they're turning their head. They have a wider surface area along the base of the back of the head, and their body is just more apt to stay in a good positioning here. And it doesn't matter, you know, like which performance of this she's doing, palms up, palms down, but you can kind of see how even the angle of her arm is a little less extreme. So if you had somebody with severe neck issues, this would definitely be another thing to consider as a stepping stone towards using the full roller. We also have moves like the tuck and tilt, and so if Edya creates her tucking and tilting, obviously you can do any of these moves that you would on the rebalance sequence. Also the rebalance moves of the 3D breath breakdown and the 3D breath, there would be nothing different here. But you also have the opportunity to do the single leg lift. So just to have Edya sort of show this positioning with her hands on the ground, what I want you to see is that her elbow is still not touching the floor, but her hands are. And I'm going to have Edya just try to decompress the weight of one of her feet from the ground. So you'll see how she doesn't hip flex, but even with the flat side up, she still has a little shifting that occurs in the body. So again, great stepping stone to move people into the process of doing the full techniques. I'll have her do it one time on the other side. And so you can see how her body will still perform the shifting or the listing even on a flat side, a nice wide spread out roller. So if I encourage Edya, let's see what happens when she puts her hands on her abdomen to do the same move, just to sort of get the idea of where she's at and how this is still a very challenging move even on a flat surfaced roller. You can see all of the shifting that occurs. And this is, again, you'd think, well, isn't she more stable because she's on a flat side roller? And the answer is no. She is still on an unstable surface even with the wide surface area. And for some clients, because you don't get as much neurological feedback because you're not compressing the spine itself, oftentimes my clients find that this is actually even more challenging than being on the full roller. So don't be surprised that this is challenging for you as well. So these are just some of the moves. Again, I just wanted to show this to you on the flat side, and let's also take a look at the curved side up on the half roller as well. Okay, so just sit up again and we'll just do this as well.
I always find it harder with the flat side up.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I mean, it is not easier. There's nothing easier about it at all.
No.
No. Okay, so now let's take a look at the modifications using the half roller, only the curved side up. Now, I think that even Edya can say this out loud, you know, on the flat side up, something like single leg lift or even gentle rocking, was it easier?
No.
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 There's nothing easier about it. It just offers up with the flat surface just a more diffused compression along the spine. So if you had someone who maybe had a spinal surgery, somebody who had a discectomy or a laminectomy, or somebody who has scoliosis or any type of spinal disorder, even osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, it's safer and more beneficial for them to be on a half roller, but still get the same neurological feedback and challenge that you would have using the full roller on the curved side up. So let's take a look at the same moves using the curved side up, and I want you to see how this is no easier. It's just, again, a modification to give a little bit more stability. So now, wouldn't you think, hey, I'm on a roller that's 100% stable on the floor? Well, the answer is yes on that, but no, you're still lying on a curved surface. So if Edya goes ahead and does her gentle rocking, you can see she can still gently rock. And this also offers up, I think, an opportunity for people to really feel how their torso is actually moving in such a subtle way. And here, although the roller's not moving with her, it is still that same experience of moving your torso against this slight curved surface of the roller. And again, she can do all of the moves of rebalance. She could do her tuck and tilt here. And what I kind of like about this is that it gives people a little bit more support. She could keep her elbows on the ground when she first begins, just to give her a little bit more stability to help acquire that control and connection to the pelvis. And then just lifting her elbows off the ground and performing the same thing will also help her autopilot reacquire its connection to the center of gravity as she influences movement of the pelvis, even on a roller that is technically stable because it's flat on the ground. She could also, again, do her 3D breath right down and her 3D breath here. But let's also take a look at that single leg lift move, this other rebalancing technique. And what I want you to see is even on a roller that's 100% stable, she still has this subtle movement in her body as she decompresses the weight of her foot. It doesn't matter on which side. She can find her core. And you can see how she minimizes hip flexion. She barely has to lift her foot off the floor. Sometimes that aids people in understanding the awareness and control. But if I had Edu put her hands on her belly to enhance her autopilot's connection to her center of gravity and to challenge the grounding or rooting reflexes, it is no easier on a roller that is flat to the ground because she's still on a curved surface. So regardless if you had the full roller, the flat side up, or this curved side up, you see all of the challenge that can still be created to enhance ground force control and reaction doing a move like this. And again, being on this roller, she could do all of the length moves from her shoulder blade reach. She could do the single arm reach. She could also do her double arm reach. And again, take a look at how, because her elbows are so close to the ground, that angle and technique and connection can be much easier for people to gain an understanding and an awareness of because she's on the smaller roller. And you also have that advanced move called the neck turn. So she could even place her hands down onto the ground and keep her chin away from her collarbones and still perform this move as well. So just remember, being on a half roller offers some bit of modification, especially for those participants that you think you are not going to be on the floor, you might be on a bed with them. This is definitely a great way to get them started and encourage them to use the roller on their own at home without it being such an event being on a full roller. So consider this with your clients who are older, have any spinal disorders, diseases, or dysfunctions, anybody who's had a spinal surgery, or somebody coming back from a hip replacement, or who has shoulder issues. Because the roller is a little lower to the ground, it's easier to acquire all the upper body length moves. So let's also take a look at some of the other techniques using the half roller. So we can also use the half roller for upper body length moves called rib length. And again, it's one of these moves that can actually be added to things like a neck release sequence, and just doing rib length as a move and not as a sequence or combining it to any sequences. So I'm going to have Edya do this with the flat side up. And the only difference between using the flat side up and the curved side up is the positioning. Here, you really can't go wrong with where the roller is. The bottom of her shoulder blades are actually going to end up on the roller because the roller's width is wider. So the bottom of her shoulder girdle is actually on the end piece of the roller. Her upper shoulder blades are up at the top of the roller. So here, if I have Edya come up into flexion first, I think what's really cool about using this half roller is that her low back is now on the ground. And you can really use that as a reference. So now if she takes her rib length, she can really allow her torso to come back, and look at how nothing moves. Isn't that great? Because now you really have some reference of where your torso is. And so even if she did her rib side bending here, this is again an easier way to really encourage people not to shift from their hips because they've got more surface area on the ground. So this can really offer up a much better approach to doing something like the rib length positions and really getting people to encourage them to move from their ribs and not from the waistline or the pelvis. So this is what it would look like with the flat side up. We could also flip the roller over, and I could have Edya try it with the curved side up. Now, the curved side up again also offers people this ability to sustain their tuck and to really feel how their low back isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to be the exact same setup. Bottom of her shoulder blades are on her side of the roller, mid-shoulder girdle on the roller. And now again, if Edya takes her rib length into extension, she's got this nice ability to really identify where she's moving from. So not only is this a modification, I think it really helps to gain an education for where somebody is actually moving from. I think that it will reduce a lot of the neck turning and the waist and rib the pelvic motion so that the movements are truly coming from the ribs themselves. And this will also encourage you guys, I think, to do a little bit more hands-on assistance with your clients so that they can actually see how much they can get done using a half roller. So although you can't do the glide and shear here, you can certainly, or the rinse, you can't do those compression techniques, you can certainly do these type of lengthening techniques. So another thing we can do with the half roller are all of the lower body length moves and the low back release sequence. So the only thing that's tough to do with the half roller is again the compression moves on the body. However, I do have clients that enjoy doing back of thigh passive shear on the curved side up. To me though, I find that most of my clients will pick the full roller, doing any of the lower body compression techniques. However, if you've got clients with low back pain, you have clients with scoliosis, you have clients with any kind of spinal disorders, diseases, or dysfunctions, using the half roller under the pelvis can really offer up a lot of opportunity for you to help them to acquire differentiated motion in the pelvis, as well as create length without all of the angled positions. So let's start with doing the flat side up, and let me just show you some of the modifications that we can do. So I'm going to have Edya go ahead and bring her hips up onto the roller. So very similar to working on rib length using the full or the half roller with the flat side up, is that placing the roller is easy. So the top of her hip bones, the inferior borders, if I were to come down, still in that relative position, she's got her whole pelvis covered by the roller. And you could even use the PSIS as the bony landmark. So I could even have Edya lift her hips up for a moment and bring it up even a touch more and then set your hips down. So now her PSIS would actually be at the top surface, the top edge of the roller, but her sacrum dead smack into the middle of the roller. The only move that would be rendered useless in this position is SI joint shear, because you really can't shear the SI joint on a flat surface. It does have to have a little bit of a curve so that you're actually compressing and isolating a region of the sacroiliac joint. Here it's too broad of a surface to actually yield changes. However, things like the modified tuck and tilt, she can still acquire this motion. And I think what's intriguing about doing a modified tuck and tilt on the flat side up is that you can really cue that the tilt is really just to untuck her pelvis and land her pelvis onto the top of the roller. They'll really get that idea of compressing straight down and really create the movement from the lowest vertebra of the lumbar spine, which is really where our differentiated motion comes from. It doesn't come from the mid-lumbar or lower thoracic vertebra. So it's, I think, easier for people to keep their bodies in a good position. And you can also do things like the bent knee press here, and still get some great change in her body. It's tougher. It's got a little bit of a more difficult thing, I think, for my clients to really identify the pelvis staying neutral, but you can still get the length into the front of the thigh even in this low position with the bent knee press. We could also have Edya try the hip to heel press, and she could still find that same length here, landing her pelvis onto the top of the roller. There's really nothing different in any of the lengthening techniques. It's just that the flat side is up. So we could also do all of these moves of both the low back release and the lengthening techniques on the lower body with the curved side up. So let's see what that looks like. So I'll have Edya just lift up her hips, and we'll bring the roller back under. Lift up one more time, good. So when the half roller is curved side up, you do have to be more mindful of the positioning again. So this is very similar to when you're on the full roller because the curved surface is exactly the same. We just want to make sure that we're marking it up just like we would. So again, the ASIS, the inferior superior iliac spines just underneath. If I draw my fingers down, she's right in the middle. PSIS floating on her side of the roller. And here again, she could do her modified tuck and tilt challenge. And you can see how, Edya's got great control and really can differentiate her pelvis. So this again, having somebody on a curved side but a half roller really, I think, allows people to slow down and make the movement a little more distinctive and small. And I really like that for most of my clients, to really educate them on how they're moving their pelvis. And because the angle of their hips is not quite so extreme, they're only about 3 inches off the ground instead of 5, it just offers, I think, a little bit more relief. You've got overweight clients, this is much easier to get under their hips. So we could also do in this position the bent knee press. So let's take a look at what that would look like. Exactly the same as what it would look like if she were on the full roller, only again, she's got this smaller level, or this less height in her hips. So if my client said to me when they were doing a bent knee press, I don't really feel it into the front of my thigh, what you could always do is just take the roller and move it up slightly higher. Don't go past the PSIS, but shifting it up higher will allow a little bit more scoop. But can you get a sense of the length in the front of your hip anyway? And then we also have hip to heel press, so we could keep that leg out and bring it up. And again, still exactly the same. We could also do the drawbridge in this position. There's no difference, and I actually think I like the drawbridge in this position, so maybe I could have Edya do a drawbridge for us just so you guys can see that when you've got the drawbridge, if she were to go too far, I could actually have Edya bring her leg all the way down to the ground so that she can really feel where the length is, and then tuck her pelvis to bring that leg back up into the proper position. And you can really see how you could even start somebody going too far and then working them back to get the length, and you can really see this nice angle that she can get from being on the half roller. So same principle as all the other lengthening techniques that you've learned. So if Edya bends her knees, she can also do the tuck and tilt challenge. Even with the roller not moving, because she's on a curved roller, she can still create that nice gentle tucking. And then to untuck or bring her pelvis into the tilt and just landing onto the top of the roller. Again, using a half roller really does help people to modify the positioning and really learn how to differentiate, because again, if you can see Edya's ribs, it's much easier to keep your ribs on the floor, right? You have more surface area because the angle is less. So if you really find that somebody, every time they do their tuck and tilt challenge, is always moving from the ribs, this can definitely be, a much more modified way where they're not going to move from there. And again, you can do your low back release move here where she just sustains her tilt and creates those 3 points of pressure. And again, what I like about being on the half roller is just it's much easier for her to sustain contact in the rib wall, which is where a lot of people go wrong in this move. So just consider using the half roller. I think you're going to find that this is going to be pretty opportunistic for a lot of your clients to learn a lot of these moves using the half roller as a modification or a stepping stone before you use the full roller. So consider that as another tool and another sequence or props to use for clients. Always great if you guys are doing a melt for MS or Parkinson's to be using the half roller instead of the full roller, and you can still do quite a profound class. You just can't do the compression moves except for one, and that's base of skull shear. So let's take a look at that one as well. Okay, so I'm just going to have you slide forward a little bit. Okay, so just stay there for a second. So one sequence that you can do using the half roller that is a compression technique, you could also on the roller when she was up on the half roller do SI joint shear just like you did on the full roller. You can do it on this. And the other area that's easy to do your passive shear on is the base of the skull. The areas that are tough obviously are the ribs and the legs. It's hard to do gliding and shearing, and those are areas that you definitely want to do some gliding, like in the calf. You could still get some of it done, but it's less useful, it's less beneficial. But base of skull shear, for sure, you could do on this roller. So if Edgy even just did a quick neck turn, just to kind of identify where her head is turning, this is just a great way to do the full sequence. So if we have Edgy bring her head on up and bring the roller at the base of her skull, I'm going to let you set it at the base of your skull where you feel it's in good position. And you'll remember to set your chin into a slight lift. If Edgy just started to turn her head left and right, this is just an easier position. Now, the one thing I would not do on the half roller is the full side lying position, because a lot of people can't find that. However, if Edgy slightly tipped her head to the left and then dropped her left knee out and outreached her left arm, she could, in this position, get not only onto the half back position that we take slightly off from the side of the skull, but she could slightly turn her head just a touch more and still get right along the side of the ear. She just doesn't have to fully side lie because of the height of the roller. And this is definitely a great one for your clients who do have some issues at the base of the skull. You can sort of see how the angle is much less for her, and she can still do this passive shear just like she could SI joint shear. She can also do the neck release move on the half roller, whether she has the curved side or the flat side up. So I'll have Edgy move the roller up just a touch higher. And if it's really at the back of your head, I would even, Edgy, lift up your head even more. Yep, and go ahead and set it down so we can really see it. Yep. So if the roller is really at the back of her head, watch how she can still do that slight head nod, lifting her chin up and then nodding her nose down. So even though the roller isn't moving, and it's okay that it's not, her hair will slightly just rub against the roller, but because of the angle, it allows them to identify tolerable compression at the back of the head on the top of the roller. So this is definitely one way to do the neck release. Now if you wanted to give them a little bit of movement, if Edgy just lifts up her head and then comes back down, on the flat side up, the roller's not going to move very much, but it'll move slightly as she nods her nose down and then brings her head back up. Again, it's the angle of play, this angle of her cervical spine, that will still create the traction and the decompression in the cervical vertebra without the roller actually moving along the floor. So it's a subtle, subtle, subtle motion in the roller, if any at all. But this again is another opportunity for you guys to consider using the half roller for your clients who need a little bit of extra help or a little less angle because of their particular circumstance. So remember, if you have anybody with any cervical issues, before you go anywhere direct, you'll be using the roller in lots of different areas, doing lots of other sequences and moves. But when you do get to the neck release sequence, you might want to start with the half roller and then upgrade them to the full roller as they learn how to do the techniques properly and as you gain benefits and changes with them.